Welcome to the podcast where together, every Monday, we explore hospitality in its very broadest sense. From culture and cooking, cocktails and coffee, nutrition and farming, politics and animal welfare, organic and sustainability, family and business, entrepreneurship, and much, much more. Come and learn with me, Mark Cribb, about where our food and our drink comes from, and the businesses and, more importantly, the human beings that thrive on where we decide to spend our time and our money. Sign up to our weekly newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk and hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. In this week's episode, I am chatting to Jennifer Wood from Canton Tea, who is also the founder of the UK Tea Academy. Now, thank goodness, in the last 15 years, the way we drink coffee has gone through a revolution. From an instant brew in polystyrene cups to beans with known provenance, carefully selected and lovingly roasted. Could tea soon follow in coffee's footsteps? Yes, if this week's guest, Jennifer Wood, founder of Canton Tea, has anything to do with it. To build her business, Jennifer has travelled to remote mountainous regions like the wild, wide Yunnan, where tea bushes live to 1,000 years and grow 40 feet high. The tea producers and masters she works with take the ritual of growing, harvesting and aging the tea as seriously as leading vineyard owners do their prize wines. When you hear how much hard work and knowledge goes into each cup of Canton's artisanal tea, whether it's black, green, oolong or the mind-blowing pu'erh, you'll understand why Jennifer thinks that even the most basic cuppa is worth much, much more than 2p a bag. Her enthusiasm is so infectious, you'll also want a Cantonista championing quality loose-leaf tea in your neck of the woods. Bring on the tea revolution and enjoy this week's conversation. Jennifer Wood from Canton Tea, thank you so much for sparing the time to be on the podcast. Can you just explain where on planet Earth are we, please?
Yes, well, we're tucked up in the bowels of a London building, not far from Tate Modern, but it's the headquarters of the UK Tea Academy.
Yeah, and I feel like I've been transferred to the Orient because we've just spent the last 20 minutes tasting a huge variety of tea. So even though I'd forgotten that I was fundamentally buried in a basement in the centre of London, but thank you. We are going to go on a pretty wild ride of tea, I think.
Good, I hope so.
Looking forward to it. So your original, I'm going to go all over the place in this conversation, but your original exposure to good tea, I think, was back when you were working at the body shop, and there was a little trigger for this. Can you just explain the story behind how you ended up drinking some incredible tea, almost without even knowing?
Yes. I mean, I did. It wasn't actually anything connected with the body shop. I happened to be working for Anita Roddick as a writer at the body shop, but my husband was involved in publishing, still is, and his great friend and mentor used to send over half a kilo, about 500 grams of this unusual looking leaf that was tea and came from the mountains of Taiwan, and it came from his family farm. And every season he would send it over to us and we would just enjoy it. We'd chuck it in a pot and we'd pour on water, and we didn't think much about it. All we knew was that it was delicious and it was unlike any other tea, any conventional tea that we'd ever really tasted before. So when I went freelance with my writing, and it was a couple of years of working with fairly dull building societies and various things, I really wanted to do something a little bit more, and just thought, that tea we've been drinking for about 10 years, wouldn't it be great if we could just get that out there and expose the British public to this amazing tea? And so we started doing some research, spent time in China, found a buying partner. But before we did that, we actually just phoned up Professor Lim, the fellow I was talking about, and said, we've had this great idea. We're going to start a little website, little company. We're going to import your tea straight over and get it out there. How about it? Is that possible?
Yeah, send us more quickly.
Yes, exactly. And, first question, how much do you reckon, what's, the tea we've been drinking, how much is it? And, a slight pause, and he said, wow, the tea that you have been drinking, that I have been sending you, would cost approximately $3,000 a kilo from the garden, because it's it's a very special tea, reserved. It's made in very small amounts, made from special bushes from a special area, made by a very famous tea master, and we only give it to our very close friends and family and government ministers. So when we thought, oh, well, okay.
Has he been waiting 10 years for you to ask that question? He's going, at some point they're going to ask me how good this tea is. He's just been sending it. He must have been
he assumed, exactly,
time.
He assumed we had a better appreciation of such a thing. But obviously we did some quick sums and worked out, how much that would translate into once you had shipped it across, packed it down into your own packaging, got it out to a customer, assuming there was a customer out there who was prepared to buy it, and then they put on their margins in a London hotel. You would be looking at a pot of tea that we're, drinking from now would be several hundred pounds a pot.
Wow.
So that was our first exposure to how good and how valued and how expensive tea can be. And, of course, London, the world was not ready. Well, London was not ready for that kind of level of tea then, and I don't think it is now.
I read it in shock last night and realised my tea naivety to not have any comprehension that you could spend that much money.
Yeah, well,
on tea.
that wasn't the most expensive by any means. Oh,
wow.
God, no, we didn't even have the
amazing.
Top
level.
You
weren't that close a friend.
We weren't a government minister.
Only $500 a pot. That's
exactly.
Yeah.
So okay. That was our first experience. But of course, we can go down the list from his garden, the same tea, the palchong, but it's a different grade, and that's what we're drinking today. And it is still absolutely superb. And then we went and explored in China, and we found a buying partner out there who we still work with today, and she buys direct from, multi-generation. She's been her family in the business for about
So you had that conversation.
generations.
You found out that there was a whole world of tea out there that you didn't know. Was the next stage going off and doing some research? Did you hop on a plane and go out there?
Yes, yeah.
And how long did it take
Absolutely.
then between having that conversation and setting up the business?
Well, because I'm not very patient,
Right.
and I tend to jump in,
Yeah.
rather than doing a sort of forensic analysis of margins and
SWOT
price
analysis.
points. Exactly. I just thought, oh God, let's just get
That's
on
not-
with it.
that's not entrepreneurial.
Why wouldn't it work?
Exactly.
Who wouldn't buy this stuff?
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. We were so excited by the whole thing. And I think also, I had spent 10 years working for this woman, Anita Roddick, who was an astonishing entrepreneur. And she would never, ever, everything was very black and white with her. And she would never say, oh, well, maybe. It was always, if it's a good idea, do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can spend years, or certainly many, many more months than we did, thinking about it. So, of course, we made tons of mistakes, but we just simply bought the tea as in the most direct possible route. I mean, the values we had then were getting the tea from the farms, understanding everything about the provenance of the leaf, bringing it across, and then just telling people about it and packing it down in my then kitchen,
Right.
and trying to...
And is that easy?
Get it
So you
out
have this
there.
idea, you have a conversation, you rock up in China, presumably, and then you've got to find the farmers direct? You go straight to a middleman?
Well, it
How
would
did
be
you...
ludicrous for a European woman just to go out there and
I'm looking
without
for
the
tea.
language and just try and buy tea.
Yeah.
I mean, if you went to the amazing market in Guangzhou, I mean, I can't remember how many square miles of tea stalls there are, all small farmers.
Wow.
Bringing the tea in from their farms. But it's an absolute blizzard.
Yeah.
And unless you have insider knowledge, you are.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I think I've been to the
Bewildered.
it reminds me of in Marrakesh when you go to the spice markets and stuff like that, and there's just hundreds of these stalls, and they see a Westerner and their eyes light up, and you don't know what you're buying.
You don't.
You've got
And
no
what
idea.
you're tasting
and you
at
end
the
up
front,
with some real nonsense, and the
they
stuff
might
that
have
goes
some,
on.
exactly. So you have to be.
So you found
with
a good
native,
partner quite
we
quickly,
really
did
did.
you?
We found a brilliant partner. Well, two, actually. And both with a long, long history in the family of tea buying.
Right.
And so that's how, and they had long-term relationships already with some farmers, good farmers, and they really, really understood their tea. And then, of course, we traveled to the farms.
Right. So
with
quite early
them.
on, your objectives was to understand the history of the tea and the region and the ethos behind the tea and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So you went deep quite quickly. You didn't just go out there and go, hey, looking for
Absolutely.
some nice tea to send to England.
Absolutely
What was the
not.
motivation to
I
go
think
that
the
far?
motivation was to, as you say, do a sort of deep dive into it. We didn't want, 100 teas to sell at any cost. We wanted to just do a few. So we started with half a dozen teas, and we just wanted to know all about them, where they came from, how they were made, how to get the best out of the leaf, and how to really move people away from, what is essentially a sort of crappy tea bag.
Dusty bag,
Yeah.
dusty bag of leaves.
Yeah.
We'll definitely come back to that. So just to bring to life this kind of, I don't know, let's just take one tea. So for example, the pu'erh tea, you've got some stories around that, around kind of eighth generation farmers. And can you just tell me a little bit as an example of one tea and the history and where it has to come from and some of the sort of the nuances, I suppose, of what makes a pu'erh tea?
Yes, yeah. Well, a pu'erh tea is one that many people never even heard of. You have your categories of tea: white, green, yellow, which is pretty unusual as well, oolong, black, and pu'erh. And the category depends mostly on the level of oxidation, the processing. The pu'erh tea is very different because they call it a post-fermented tea. It's a compressed tea. It gets better and better as it ages, generally, as long as it's been made well and it's been stored correctly. A pu'erh tea has to come from Yunnan, southwest China. It has to come from the broadleaf varietal of tea plant, the Camellia sinensis samica, and it has to be sun-dried, and that is an authentic pu'erh tea. The way that it's made, it's similar to a green tea, but all the enzymes are not killed in the leaf with heat. So it carries on developing. This sort of microbial action goes on within after it's been compressed between sort of granite blocks into different shapes. So you can have a cake shape or a brick or even a mushroom or all sorts of different shapes. But then it's wrapped in paper, and it must be paper, so that it can still be exposed, it can still breathe, it can still develop. Plastic will absolutely kill it and make it mouldy. It'll just be a disaster. So it has to be stored, ideally in the paper made from the vegetation around where the tea is produced, the little factory where it's produced. And then, so a bean cha, which is a cake of pu'erh, is packed together, 7 of them, into a tong, and then wrapped in bamboo and tied, and can be stored very carefully for decades.
Really?
And yeah, I mean, it goes for a phenomenal amount of money if it's made from a reputable factory and it's been stored by someone who knows what they're doing, who knows how to store it, so obviously away from any sort of particular humidity or anything.
So you went here and saw this process.
Oh, yeah.
Met the people. What's Yunnan like? Is this a particularly hot place? Is it?
Yunnan is it's a wild place. I mean, you flew to Kunming, which is a sort of big area, and then another small flight to Shambana, and then you're on a truck, and then you're going through small villages, and then you end up on a smaller sort of Land Rover going up into the mountains, and then actually you have to walk eventually. Some of the places we went to where the wild tea is picked, wild tea bushes, trees, they grow, 40 odd feet high. They can be 800 to 1,000 years old. They are allowed to be, the government allows the native people there, in this case it was the Dai people, they're allowed to, it's not so much that they own the land, but they own the right to look after the trees and pick the leaves.
So in my head, I'm imagining not so much as a farm, but just a natural kind of area where these trees grow, basically.
Absolutely. It's the wild. It's the mountains. And these trees are growing wild in amongst the other, some bamboo and obviously a ton of native flora and fauna.
This is very different to where our little bag of tea in the cupboard that costs a penny comes from, I'm presuming.
It couldn't be further away.
I'm guessing that doesn't all come from on foot.
Very, very little comes from. And these guys, they use ladders. They're dressed in their most, their regular costume, which is still incredible embroidered waistcoats, really beautiful, brightly coloured. And very little of this is produced. And we were travelling with our buyer and a tea maker who's a sort of travelling tea maker, tea master. He goes around and he buys the leaf and he takes it back to his place and produces the pu'erh himself from these amazing leaves. So, they're pretty special.
That's impressive. So who are they making that for? This is for the domestic local market?
Not so, the domestic market, yes. Right. And he's got an amazing reputation now, so he sells his pu'erh for a lot of money.
And some of these guys are presumably just drinking it in the village where it's picked. But is it predominantly for the wealthier part of society? This has got a value?
It is.
I suppose you mentioned about the fact that it ends up in government or whatever. But there's a multi-tiered level, I guess, of where
very
this
much
tea
so.
goes.
I mean, what's fascinating about tea is if it isn't given, if it isn't made well, then it has very little value. If it's not, for instance, in Myanmar. Recently, there's a project going on through a friend of mine, and she's been out there, and the tea was growing all around the village. They were also open mining gems. There were women and children up to their necks in sort of filthy water, just sort of, trying to find the odd nugget. And it was all, it's a complete house. And the tea, they'd just pick, leave it around for a bit, chuck some water on it and drink it. Had no value whatsoever. What they're doing now, this is a really lovely project. They're now actually gone out picking the tea at the right time of year, making it really beautifully and producing some fantastic black tea, which we're shortly going to be buying.
That's good. And you were telling me earlier that to know when the leaves are ready to pick, there's a little, was it a bug? What was it?
A tea jacid. That's from a tea.
That?
Yeah, this is one we've got in front of us now. It's Oriental Beauty. And that again is from Taiwan. And it's an oolong tea.
Okay, so remind me, what's an oolong tea?
An oolong tea is in between a black tea and a green tea. So it's semi-oxidized. A green tea is not oxidized at all. The leaf is picked and heated quickly after picking, either in China, generally in a hot, dry wok, to kill, they call it kill green, which is to kill the enzymes in the leaf to prevent any further oxidation. And a black tea is fully oxidized. So it's rolled and tumbled and the cells are broken down to release the enzymes to begin the oxidation process until it's all very sort of dark, malty, and it's withered and rested and dried and rolled and rested again and finally heated to make it stable. So an oolong is between a black and a green.
Okay.
You can have a heavily oxidized oolong, so it's close to a black tea, or a lightly oxidized oolong, much, much closer to green tea.
Right, which is what we're drinking at the moment. And there are half a dozen very different colours, from extremely pale to extremely to dark, which is that related to the oxidisation?
Absolutely,
the more oxidised, the darker the tea.
Exactly,
basically.
yes,
okay.
Generally that's the case. And the Oriental Beauty is the one, it's from Taiwan in the mountains of Wenshan. And this leaf is, the tea bushes, when they are ready to be harvested, the farmer knows because a little tea jacid comes out and nibbles the edges of the leaf. So that's the time. The tea bush knows it's under attack, that releases some kind of enzyme which lends a different characteristic to the eventual liquor. And also where the tea jassid has nibbled the edges of the leaf, that begins the oxidation process as well, because of course it's damaged the cells.
Right. And is that knowledge, is that thousands of years, hundreds of years old? How long has that process been going on?
Well, the Taiwanese obviously came over from China, so less than some of the more ancient teas that we have. So
okay. Amazing what nature does. It's similar to the frost in the UK, I think. I didn't really realise until I started learning about farming and growing veggies, but certain things happen, post the last frost. I think maybe it's Jerusalem artichokes, and it's kind of 6 weeks. I'm going to be bombarded by feedback going, no, that's nonsense. But the concept that something happens in the soil after the first frost and it changes the reaction of the vegetables, they obviously put up some sort of defence mechanism, and it's 6 weeks after that, then they're ready to pick, basically. And I just love that nature gives us those little gifts, basically, and changes stuff. It's amazing. So it sounds like it's much more along the lines of the nuances of wine and that where it's grown and the specialist kind of knowledge and how it's treated.
There's no question that obviously I'm completely biased, but tea, I think, has far more complexity and real sort of interest for me anyway, and more aligned to the wine world than it is to coffee in many ways, because it's all about, there are so many varietals of tea now. You have originally, of course, in the broader sense, you have Camellia sinensis. Sinensis is a native Chinese tea bush, and the Camellia sinensis is Samarca, native Indian tea bush. And from there are thousands and thousands of different varietals now. And it's they've adapted to, obviously, the terroir, the area that is best. And they've also been crossbred to make them more bug resistant, or to make them more, grow better at higher altitude, or whatever the reason. Or the silver needle that we're also drinking. I mean, that's a Dabaihao that's got a particularly long, silvery leaf bud, and that's perfect because it's able to be picked when it's still absolutely, soft and fuzzy before it's opened out into the leaf. But it's all about the terroir. So, everything that nature throws at that bush is going to influence the character of the liquor.
Okay, and a little bit like farming in the UK, I suppose, and that industrialised approach. I'm presuming that when you get to the level of the huge multinational, big produced teas, these are intensively farmed with pesticides and all sorts of different approaches, I suppose. And then the ultimate level is get up into the mountains where they're using the natural sort of tea and the leaves in the hills. Is that pretty much the same?
It is,
as global farming? And
still, there is, the tea industry is, really struggling with a reputation from the big boys. It is still a massive, teas are produced on an industrial scale, and they are shockingly cheap. Yeah. So these teas are not expensive. I think these teas still represent value. Of course, we talk about, some of these that are phenomenally, hundreds of pounds a pot, but mostly they are, it's still extremely accessible when you consider the price of a bottle of wine. For a single serve of a really decent green, black or oolong tea, it could be anything from 20, 25 pence to 60 pence, which...
Yeah. It's phenomenal value, isn't it? Considering the journey it's been on.
Absolutely. And you can reinfuse those leaves repeatedly. Right. So you get, lots and lots out of it. And that's compared to a tea bag of about, a couple of pence. And if you think of the value chain, what are those primary pickers or people working in that?
Feels like we should be on the cusp of a change then. Hopefully this informative chat will help that, because we've seen it in coffee. We were all drinking instant coffee out of polystyrene cups for donkey's years, weren't we? And then 10, 15 years ago, all of a sudden we started to learn that there was decent coffee available in the world. And then we went through a period of maybe mass-produced, albeit slightly better coffee, and then we got to fair trade. And certainly now in the specialist coffee market, it's much more about, better than fair trade. It's about knowing the farms that it's come from. It's about organic coffee being grown without using too much water. It's about the living standards of the people that are kind of growing that. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like we're on the cusp of a similar journey in tea?
Oh, absolutely. I really do. I mean, I think compared to where we were 11 years ago, we were still in the wilderness absolutely. I mean, the struggle it was to get people to take any of this in the F&B world. And now the landscape is completely different. And it's driven by consumers. You know, they are demanding more. They're going into, you know, even the cafes, they're getting a decent coffee, a really beautiful coffee, understand the provenance, understand, you know, the fanaticism that has gone into getting those beans and creating a good coffee at the end of it. And there are an awful lot of tea drinkers out there who are still demanding.
Well, we are
same.
still renowned, and the irony that we're renowned as a nation obsessed by tea and the cuppa, and yet we've been drinking, you know, comparative garbage for all of these years. How have we ended up being known as the greatest tea drinkers in the world, apart from obviously the Chinese, but drinking the really rubbish
consider
stuff?
that the Chinese have been actually cultivating tea for 4,000 years, over 4,000 years, you know, not just drinking it, but really cultivating it. And then, of course, historically, the British Empire owning or controlling tracts of India started the tea industry, the tea estates there, because, you know, they were fed up with, Victoria fed up with all the coffers of England, the silver, going out to buy tea and silk and spices and porcelain, and all the ships were being, you know, pirated or wrecked. And so the silver was going out there to buy this stuff, and there was a massive trade deficit. You know, the Chinese wanted nothing in return except the silver. So that's when the shift changed, and that's when they bought the tea seeds from China and started actually growing them up in Darjeeling. That's where they really took off. So that's why Darjeeling is a very different tea in India. Down in the Assam, around the Brahmaputra River, they're growing the native Indian tea bush, the Camellia sinensis assamica, which is flushing all year round. It's growing all year round, and it's producing these, you know, strong, dark flavoured teas. And up in Darjeeling, it's much lighter, brighter. It's a high-grown tea from the Chinese tea bushes, right, which were still there 200 years on, brought from those tea seeds.
Wow. Yeah, I hadn't really made the link between the sort of the colony. I suppose it makes sense. Yeah, bring it out of China and into a colonized country, and then you've got direct access to it.
Absolutely. And then, of course, they could grow their own tea, send it back, and they could also grow opium. And East India Company, was evil empire in those days, and they were growing opium and dumping that on the coastal region of China, you know, right, trading that, even though it was completely
so
illegal.
we took their tea and sent them opium.
Exactly right, hence the Opium Wars. And,
right. It's a history lesson as well.
Oh my God, there is so much influence of tea on almost every aspect of life, actually, on history, on, you know, the sort of ship design, you know, trying to get the ships faster to bring the teas back, the tea clippers, making them much heavier on the sail, because they would race back they would leave China on the same tide, and they would arrive in London about an hour apart, incredibly, after sort of 90 days sailing. But the first one back would get the prize and the better money.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, that's great, isn't it? Okay, so thank you, because now I at least understand that tea is awesome. You've got another range, I think, in your tea where you say it's Canton limited edition, and you say this is where you give way to whimsy and extreme desire. Can you just give an example of what's the? I think that's a quote from your website.
Yes,
what's the difference? What's the difference between those two? It is
because, you know, as we all know, in this sector, we have to at some point hit a certain price point.
Right.
You know, there is a limit to what people will pay generally for, you know, a core range of black, green, oolong, white tea. So we make sure that we get the very best that we can at that level. But we also, there are so many beautiful teas that we taste, are exposed to, we know about, we've visited, and we just have to bring them in. We have to have them. And it also you don't have to have your whole menu with extraordinary, astonishing and quite expensive teas. You can just have one or two, which will completely lift your menu, give your team something really exciting to talk about to your customers. You can have an exclusive little limited edition, which very few other people in the UK would ever have tasted or ever have come across. And
we're so used to telling the stories. Hospitality is fundamentally about stories. So, for me, the point of good hotels and good bars and good restaurants is the stories. And most of the stories we're telling are about our suppliers. It's these people who've gone off and taken their obsession to the ultimate level. And if we're having that conversation around our egg supplier and our fish supplier and where our meat's coming from, and you see all the location-specific information on the menus, it seems odd that we're not doing that on tea.
Why not tea? Yes. Absolutely. Especially,
we're all going to change
I hear it so often. I had a beautiful meal. Last thing I had was, a really ordinary cup of tea.
Yeah.
And they say, why don't they have this sort of beautiful tea, because it's the last thing you go away with.
It's a no-brainer. So going back into the actually setting up the business then and the challenge. So you're in China, you've learned this phenomenal amount of information, you've got the contacts, you've found a product. It's the other side of the world. You're buying a product that presumably needs a certain way of being stored. You mentioned that some of this tea is wrapped in the paper of the local sort of vegetation.
Right. Yeah.
How on earth do you go about transferring it across the planet and keeping it in that condition? This presumably wasn't easy.
The beauty of tea is if it's been made properly, which of course, with all their experience in these farms it has, and it is sealed, so it is absolutely airtight, and it's away from light and humidity and all the rest of it. It's a stable product. Okay. It's not actually as complex as many others. Sure, if it's open, then the tea farms, they generally have, a freezer at around sort of 2 degrees that they keep their tea at really sort of cold, and they can keep it. But actually, as long as it's not exposed to extreme temperatures, and in shipping containers it generally isn't, then it's really a fairly straightforward sort of transport.
So were there any sort of lessons that jump out, anything you learned in those early days that you still remember and oh my God, I had no idea around the complexities of that, or anything that jumps out where you think that was a useful learning opportunity? Or not really?
Well, I mean, there's so many. I think my naivety, first of all, in assuming that everyone would just get it. They would just taste it, see it, love it, buy it. It took years, absolute years. I think, we struggled.
Yeah, because you had a very specific idea in your mind about the sort of tea you wanted to buy, but I'm getting the impression you had no idher about the sort of person that was going to buy it.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. We at the beginning we had our website, which anyone could buy, so we could go direct to the consumer. And now we're just focused only on trade.
Right.
But back then, yes, I mean, we were pathetically grateful for anyone to sort of buy it.
Who bought first?
Well, one of the best, actually, one of our oldest and most loyal and forward-thinking customers is Petersham Nurseries, who started in Richmond. Well, they're still there. They've still got a beautiful place in Richmond, just along the river. And I was across the river in Twickenham, so I would actually be packing down the tea in the kitchen and putting it on my bike and cycling down to the river and going on the foot ferry across to Petersham and delivering it that way.
Amazing. There's quite a few people who start on a bike. Honey Buns I interviewed, and they were the same. She was driving around Oxford or riding around, or didn't even have a driving licence, and delivering all of her cakes by push bike, and now delivers nationally to a huge producer. So it's funny how many people start on a push bike.
Yeah. Well, they just happened to be deliciously close, and they were brilliant. And now, of course, they've got a fabulous place in Covent Garden, and we still have a really nice range with them, and
nice.
They've been.
So why the shift then? So originally you were trying to sell direct in presumably complex. You're bringing over tea and selling it in little bits. It must have felt like this is a lot of work to go out there, fly out there, meet these people, bring it back, and then send it to.
I know, and our margins were absolutely pitiful. I mean, they're not great now, but
So what was the trigger to? Because you don't sell direct to the consumer anymore, do you? You did for a while. Was that presumably via a website or?
It was, same website, so anyone could buy it. Okay. Absolutely anyone. And as you say, and I would spend hours on the phone to, Barry Bigelow in Wales, who was buying 50 grams of something unusual and wanted to know everything about it, which is fine, as you would to, a hotel, which was wanting to sort of put it in afternoon tea and bedroom, this sort of thing. So, a few years ago we did, we took a step back and had a moment to take a clear look at the business, doing a rebrand. It wasn't just changing the logo and the look and feel of the thing. It was also looking at what do we do best, who do we serve best, and it was absolutely, buying these gorgeous teas direct and everyone in the company just having focus on one partner, which would be trade, so hotels, restaurants, and
good move.
Brilliant move.
Yeah.
Except the frustration from people saying, "I really want to buy this. Where do I go?"
Yeah.
Go, okay, well, what's your website? Can I just buy it off the website?
Yeah.
You have to go to our partners. You have to go.
But there are people who will sell to the domestic trade as well, will they? Or can you only buy it as a hotel or as a restaurant or as are there delis where they can buy it from those wholesalers, I suppose, where you can buy
some of the guys have our teas in retail tins, that they can sell on through.
Yeah, because it would, on a personal level, I'm kind of, I'm looking forward to somehow I'm going to find access to your tea easier than flying over to China. Although I do now want to go up that mountain and meet the local, what were they called, tea masters.
Oh,
that sounds awesome. Yes. I travelled in China for a while. It's such an amazing part of the world. Okay, so do you think then that we have seen this change? Your experience, because I'm sat here and when I was researching this last night, I was kicking myself going, why don't I know this much information? You're obviously in the industry and you see it. So do you have that delusion that everybody's now talking about this kind of tea, or is there a genuine kind of shift and a genuine change? And is there any evidence, I suppose, that demonstrates that there is a change in the appreciation of loose leaf quality tea?
Yeah, there's definitely a change. There's no question that the hotels now, for a while they've been serving loose leaf and it's probably been okay, but if they want to differentiate themselves, they just need to do better and buy better and have all the support. That it's no good just buying what they think is a decent leaf from their tea partner, their tea supplier. They now expect, as we were talking about, all those stories, so that their team are confident and enthusiastic about those leaves. They need proper training, so. Canton never just dumps the leaves on a business. We actually make sure that we're in there, because no matter how much love, care, skill has gone into producing the leaf, if you just pour boiling water on a really sensitive Japanese leaf, for instance, Japanese green tea, it's going to taste bitter, astringent, oversteeped, and it'll be ruined. So they have to understand how to brew the teas correctly. And green teas, generally, this is just a general tip to everybody who doesn't already know this, is that any green tea you have in your cupboard is going to taste better if you brew it cooler.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely no question. Even your dusty bag from your supermarket green tea, that will be a lot better if you don't pour boiling water on it, because at super high temperature, you're dissolving all the astringent compounds in the leaf. If you brew it cooler, about 60, 65, 70 degrees, then you're going to get the actual flavour notes coming through, and you're not going to dissolve.
And what's the easiest way of doing that? Boil the kettle, let the water cool down a bit? Or do you get a special kettle?
There are dozens of ways. Obviously, the easiest just to get your temperature-controlled kettle. Another way is to pour cold water in, a proportion of cold water onto the lees before or an ice cube. Pop an ice cube in there before you put on your boiling water. Or you allow, if you're a very different personality to me, you just boil a kettle and sit and wait for it to cool,
Right.
But that's agony.
Yeah. Well, I have one of those special taps that permanently, in my kitchen that permanently pumps out the cooker kind of taps, which I think is a fantastic invention. But now I'm feeling bad because, I'd have ice cube's a good idea.
Absolutely. Pop a couple of ice cubes in. Because it comes out extremely hot from those taps.
It does, yeah. It's like a magic. I don't know how it works, but I love it. Okay. And therefore there is a willingness then that people are happy to pay, basically, for a premium product. And does that...
They are. I mean, when people don't complain generally about bad tea, it's kind of what they expect, when they're in sort of, cafes and things. But they really notice good tea. And I think that's a key point, that if you put an extra 50 pence, if you're serving something ordinary, if you put an extra 50 pence on your cost, or even £1 on the cost, you have covered the extra that you're paying for your tea. You're making better margins, and you're serving something you can actually stand behind and be proud of.
It's the same as wine, I guess, isn't it? Is it at a certain level, sub €4 or £4 now, pretty much parity? I think it's pretty much all tax and transport and the packaging and very, very little is actually on the wine, but go up to £6 and all of a sudden the farmers are 200% more money because the rest of those kind of fixed costs have been covered, I suppose. So
yes.
I presume it's the same. Does the money ripple back then to the actual tea maker and the tea provider and the tea master?
It certainly does in these instances, because it's such a short chain.
Yeah, okay.
It's direct. We buy direct. We've never really gone down. We were certified organic for a long time, but that just threw into question. So this tea is organic and it costs so much, and this other tea is not organic, yet it costs more. How can that be?
Yep.
Isn't the organic one better? No, absolutely not. It's not as we were talking earlier, it's actually not about, organic is not about quality.
Yeah.
It's about, a certain processing. And if you're buying direct from traditional artisan production, it's actually often beyond organic. We all know
the irony is that all food was called food before we kind of started making it in a non-organic way, isn't it? Organic is something that we've tried to put a label on food to kind of go, after we caused all the problems, like pre all the pesticides and fertilizers and intensive farming, all food was organic, wasn't it? So if you've got tea bushes that have been there for 2,000 years in the mountains of China, it's organic, but it doesn't have an organic accreditation.
Of course not.
How are they going to jump through the hoops to become accredited?
And the best farmers don't need that accreditation. As you say, the domestic market is so strong that tea is going to sell out anyway, and we're lucky to get our...
I think the key is you've got to work with, and it's great that you go over there and meet the farmers and have some great local contacts, because the key is finding farmers that share your ethos, I think, isn't it? And then that's more important than any accreditation. And we'll probably do a podcast on this at some point, but I don't mind if it's MSC Fish or it's organic accreditation or it's fair trade. They're base points. The best thing you can do is meet the farmers or meet the producers and make sure they share their ethos. We were chatting about this earlier about Guy from Riverford, and actually I don't think we did talk about this one. This was yesterday, but we did. This was this idea that the leaves, wasn't it? The leaves are sterilising the soil, and the fact that to sterilise the soil to kill the weeds for some of the baby leaves like spinach and stuff like that in France uses 2,000 litres of diesel per hectare to bring the soil up to a certain temperature that kills the weeds. Yet that's still considered to be organic, which is so far away from environmental practice.
Yeah.
The MSC were the same, and this may not be the case now, but when we were looking into salmon in the restaurant, which we ended up just stopping selling, but the MSC salmon was caught off the Alaskan coast, was frozen at sea, was sent to China for packaging, and was then distributed around the world. So although it had MSC accreditation as being from sustainable stocks, it's not sustainable from, I think, most people's perspective on the miles that it ends up unreasonably travelling. So a lot of these accreditation things are fantastic at raising awareness, and fair trade's a great kind of base point. Don't go worse than that. but we can always do better. The best fish, I
Absolutely.
think, is caught from the day boats, the little day boats that cannot overfish by definition because they go out from your local port
Yeah.
and they come back 6 hours later and they've got limited capacity. So yeah, people just need to check more. But I've gone off on a slightly ranty tangent. When you're over there in China though, and you see this, so what to them is just a way of life, and they've always drunk this tea. Is their preparation process. They presumably follow this. They have water at the right temperature. Am I right in thinking that there's kind of tea festivals and that this is part of the local culture? Can you just explain what tea means in China?
Absolutely, but the sort of ceremonial thing with tea is in China is when you're at the farms, which is where I spent more time rather than, rather sort of fancy.
Rather than in the palaces and the politicians.
Sadly, yes, yes. Well, not sadly at all. But, they are actually, it's almost like they're destruction testing their leaves. The farmers sit there, often with a sort of fag in their mouth.
Yeah.
And they have got tea pretty much at boiling. They might have left it 30 seconds or so. And they make it in a very, very different way to the way that Eve and I have here. I mean, I've used quite a lot of leaf and they're small pots, but their gongfu style of tea making is with a very small pot and very tiny cups and a lot of leaf. And they do many, many, many infusions, several, 5, 6 infusions of the same leaf. And they kind of like, often, I'm thinking particularly Tiguanyin, I'm Buddha in Fujian, where I spent quite a lot of time with the farmers because it was raining. We were waiting for the harvest, but they couldn't pick the leaves while it was raining. So days, evenings, days, nights went by waiting for the rain to stop before we could actually harvest the leaves. So that was drinking tea solidly all day. I mean, I didn't sleep. I mean, I was so caffeinated.
Right, yeah.
Had a couple of hours, but didn't matter because starting again, more caffeine. So I didn't really notice the lack of sleep. But the way that they make the tea is just completely different. And they kind of like to draw out as much of the tea and the stringency and the caffeine as possible. Whereas there is no tea that I would put boiling water on, even a black tea, just leave it a little bit and then pour it on. Because I never put milk in any tea. So, even in English breakfast, Canton English breakfast, I drink light and it's bright and it's beautiful. It has no astringency whatsoever. If you let it brew a little bit longer, then of course you can add milk. And there's actually a tea that I wanted to taste today in 1843. It's called Canton 1843. There's a really sweet story around that. It's our alternative English breakfast tea.
Right.
And it's made entirely from Chinese leaf because in 1843, there's a guy called Richard Davies, who's a Scottish guy actually, who was a tea merchant living in New York. So he had his tea company in New York, and he created a new blend. And it was entirely from Chinese teas because at that time, tea wasn't produced commercially in India. So it would have been Chinese teas. And it was dark and black teas. And he called it English breakfast. And this English breakfast, he told all the New Yorkers, this is what they were drinking back in the UK. And it obviously, took off and became this incredibly popular tea and everyone started mimicking it. But when we found out about this story and the origin of English breakfast tea, the beauty is that his company was called Canton Tea. When we started our company, called it Canton Tea, we didn't realize then there had been a predecessor and he had invented the English breakfast. So as a Scottish guy in New York, made the English breakfast tea from Chinese leaf. And what we have done is recreate. We've gone back into the research and we've recreated as close to the original English breakfast tea as possible. So it's using a bit of kimun leaf, which is dark, lovely, slightly smoky Chinese tea, and some da hong pao, which is a dark oolong. It's called one of the sort of rock oolongs.
Okay.
And some Yunnan black, so a lovely black tea from Yunnan. And that combination is sensational.
Really? So he knew his stuff, this Richard Davison. It wasn't just he wasn't.
I think he was just lucky. They only had good tea coming over in those days.
Right. Yeah. He wasn't just trying to blag. This is what they're all drinking. But
he was just
amazing.
a marketing genius.
Yeah, amazing. That's really good, isn't it? Well, we'll definitely try it. Apart from the kind of the costs and the culture and this education process around the tea we've talked about. There has been a huge growth in the last few years around sort of herbal teas and fruit teas and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, not teas, but herbal.
Teas. So what's your perspective on that sector and what it's doing?
Okay, well, again, I think fantastic. Anything that elevates whatever we're consuming is just great. The disappointing thing about these herbals and these fruit so-called teas, but obviously if it hasn't got Camellia sinensis in, it is not a tea.
You say obviously. Most people
obviously
if it hasn't got what? Sorry?
The leaf from the tea bush, the Camellia sinensis. So if it's mint, chamomile, berry teas, they are herbals, tisanes, whatever they are, but they're not true teas.
In the same way that soy and almond and oats aren't necessarily milks if you're
exactly
a dairy farmer.
right.
So,
yeah.
Gotcha.
So I know, it's. I fall into it as well, but if you're going to be pedantic, then it's not tea. However, back to the question, I think it's really great if they are improved upon. And I mean, I have to say that most berry and hibiscus teas, most of those fruit teas, they smell promising. Open them up and they've got the sort of volatile oils come off and this is going to taste good. Pour on the boiling water, which is okay because it hasn't got the Camellia sinensis in. Exactly. You're not going to draw out all the astringent notes. And it generally delivers very little on the flavour. It's usually a bit flat and often sort of muddy and disappointing. So what we did is treat, we have herbals, of course, and fruit teas, and we do exactly the same with those. We look at the best possible thing we can do with them to improve the quality. So our berry and hibiscus, as far as we know, I hesitate to say we're the only, but we might well be people who we use from the fruit oils in our berry and hibiscus tea. And you'd think that would be expected because it's natural flavourings. I mean, here's another area. Natural flavourings can come from bark or mushroom, can be rendered through a laboratory and made to taste like a strawberry. And that is a natural flavouring in your strawberry and blackcurrant tea. But it doesn't taste that good. And
so it's a natural flavouring, but it's not natural to what it's supposed to taste
Not at all. It's just from a natural source at some point.
Right. So a piece of old wood that just happens to...
And so when you see natural flavouring written on all the packets,
interesting.
It is not. So our berry and hibiscus has from the fruit oils, from blackcurrant, strawberry, raspberry, and it is the fruit oil and it delivers on the taste. You can smell it and you can taste it. And it's got wild Spanish licorice in as well, which is the root, and it's gorgeous. And these are lovely, slippery sort of flavour, mouthfeel.
Yeah, okay.
So, fine, fantastic. People are funny about caffeine, although I think caffeine's actually quite a good thing in moderation. And that's another great thing about tea, and the difference between tea and coffee is because tea has this magic ingredient, this L-theanine. The caffeine gives you the hit and raises your levels of
sort of concentration.
Yes, all that sort of thing. But the L-theanine, it has a completely different effect on the body, and it acts as a sort of sedative almost. So it acts against the caffeine, which is why, and it's absorbed through the gut and into the bloodstream up to the brain much more slowly. And it counters the effects of the caffeine, which is why with tea you can stay alert and focused, but you don't have that same jittery hit.
Right, as you would get with coffee.
As you would get with coffee, because coffee doesn't have the L-theanine compound. Yeah. And that is this incredible thing in tea.
There's a little nugget of wisdom there. So if we want to be more the caffeine hit is longer and more useful, basically.
Absolutely, especially if you're studying, and you want to stay awake or for whatever reason.
Okay.
then
I
it's really
can't.
good.
I don't drink. I love coffee. Sorry, no, but I can't drink coffee after 1:30 in the afternoon, something like that. Or
Me
I'm
neither.
awake. Would it be the same with tea, or does
Well,
that?
oh God, it depends. I mean, I used to ask questions in the early days. I still ask questions about tea because, God, there's so much to learn. But I used to answer almost every question with an "it depends." I mean, the levels of caffeine depend entirely on which tea you're drinking and how you brew it. If you brew it hot, you're going to extract more caffeine.
Okay.
If you brew a lot of leaf, there's going to be more caffeine. If you have a chopped up leaf, extract more caffeine. If it's,
Makes sense.
there are all sorts of ways. But some teas have more caffeine in than others.
Okay.
Oolongs are supposed to have less.
Really?
Because a lot of it comes off in the sort of roasting, a roasted oolong.
So I'd like
see.
to be alert in the afternoon, which I would get from my coffee hit, but not be alert at 10 o'clock at night when I want to go to
Right.
sleep. What tea should I drink?
I would say that up until about 6 o'clock at night, you're good with most teas.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I've had so many samples of tea this morning. I should still be buzzing tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So we'll see how it goes. I'll do some testing.
Yeah, probably a green is your
Yeah.
best bet.
Okay. Not a bark fake fruit tea.
No, well, that hasn't got any caffeine in, so you'd be fine drinking that. But it just
drink those, but
it just won't taste good.
They're rubbish. Not all of them. Okay, so there's clearly a lot of work to do with all of this knowledge and the temperature and the nuances. Is this what led to the UK Tea Academy? Was it fundamentally we can now get really good tea, but we need to understand it and we need to understand how to make it, because you co-founded that a couple of years ago, I think. What was the motivation?
Yeah, that's right. The motivation was a company like Canton can go in and deliver a certain level of training, and that's absolutely essential at the beginning, and then it needs to do regular training. But there are some people, like a wine sommelier, there are some people who want to go further. They want to know more, and they want to really, so where do they go? Well, there are all sorts of books, but actually there was nowhere in the UK. And Jane Pettigrew is someone who I've known for a long time. She's a great friend, and she's the most, possibly one of the most well-known people in the tea world. She's got a British Empire Medal for services to, tea and tea history. She's a great educator on tea. She's written about 16 books. I think her encyclopedia is over there in the corner. That won best publication at the Tea Awards last year in Las Vegas, the major World Tea Awards. So she is absolutely the doyen, the top of the tea world. Incredible following in Japan and America and basically over the world. And she has been running courses by herself for a long time. And I approached her and said, why don't you have a team around you? Why don't you have, basically a structure around you so that you can write courses, deliver the teaching, and have other people as well helping to do the teaching and take this to a different level? And happily, she agreed. She's written all the courses and been running them for a few years. We're now in this permanent classroom space in Southwark, and it is aimed primarily at people who are starting businesses in the tea world or who are already working in F&B. And this is a little area that is, they can really get some differentiation by knowing a great deal more about tea.
And is this, what sort of thing would they be learning then? Is this similar to the sort of WSET kind of
Yes.
wine sommelier training?
Yes, it is.
Is there a 1-day course, a 3-week course?
The first course is a tea champion course, which is 2 days. Very intense. You sit here and you taste. You think we've tasted a lot of teas today. Oh my God. Over those 2 days, I think they taste something like 48 different teas. And they learn all about where they come from, how they're made. They do, even blind tastings. At the end, they have a little exam and they become a tea champion after 2 days. And then the next level up is tea sommelier, and it's a 4-day course, possibly maybe made a 5-day course because there is so much in it that doing the exam at the end of that is pretty overwhelming. So it's, again, and many, 80, 90, 100 teas, I'm not sure quite how many that tasted in that, but the brewing team are absolutely constantly brewing. And there is just so much to learn about, because there are so many different regions that produce tea, of course, and all the teas are made in different ways and have an entirely different history and entirely different varietal, and so the cultivation and the processing and...
Yeah, I'm thinking that, while we're in central London, you can't walk more than 100 metres without seeing a coffee shop. And I've worked with our coffee suppliers for years, and the amount of work, they don't want any barista serving a naff cup of their coffee, so they put a huge amount of work in, and they've got all these training centres with, a dozen kind of espresso machines, and people are trained for days. It feels like that's going to be a busy tea academy, because if you're going to apply the same approach, you clearly, and now me, wants to be able to walk into probably the same place. I want to be able to go in, and then one day I want to have an espresso or a mocha, but the next day I might just want to have some sort of beautiful tea. It feels like you've got a lot of work to do, haven't you?
There's a lot of work to do.
Thousands of people, because you presumably want to be able to walk into any one of these places and get a decent cup of proper tea.
Yeah, that'd be nice,
and
but
it's really hard, isn't it?
We're a long way from that.
You really are, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're going to be really busy.
Yeah, and I think it's people understanding the value of tea training as well. I mean, Fortnum Mason, they send all their staff through. They've done a great job.
Really?
And really sort of respect the need to understand, the leaf they're selling. And some of the big hotels, really good as well, at sending people through and making sure that, especially for that afternoon tea, it's not just all about the food and the cakes. It really is a fundamental part of that afternoon tea is delivering a beautiful tea and understanding all about it and having a great range. And they will then, of course, be able to go back and help decide what teas they have on that range. And of course, there's tea pairing now, which is so popular and essential. And there's so many other things to do with tea. I mean, we've just done a very conventional thing today with, drinking it as we have with lovely, liquor from water poured on the leaf. But what I haven't done is made you a cocktail with, beautiful infused gin from, these amazing leaves, or many other cocktails are really getting off. Or, of course, there's, cold infusions and sparkling teas and kombucha and all these things that are going on with tea now, because it's got these amazing, antioxidants going on and all the sort of health benefits that people claim. Not us necessarily. We do the science.
Yeah, facts only.
We do the facts only. Yeah.
No nonsense. When you say about tea pairing, you mean beyond a slice of Victoria sponge, do you? It's not just tea and cake. What are you pairing it with? You're not pairing it with a spaghetti bolognese or something?
You certainly can be.
Really?
Yeah, well, certainly there are things that work well with, with salmon or with, duck. Or, that's another thing, actually. Cooking with tea is a really, really big deal.
Yeah. I need to send up my cocktail barman and my chefs. I think they could learn a lot from... They really could. There are some fabulous recipes. You just need an ambassador in each company, don't you? In the same way you do with coffee.
Exactly.
Somebody who cares.
We want a Cantonista out there in every single area that we... we do actually. The Soho House Group, we work with them. Getting Cantonista in each of the houses. So we try and make sure that the standards are maintained. Yeah.
And at the time that you did this then, when you first went out there and found these incredible teas and these incredible stories, you were trailblazing. There was nobody else who'd really done it, which I still find remarkable because it was only sort of 12 or 13 years ago. Are lots of people getting involved in that market now, or is it still
I can't claim to be the
not the first person.
The first, sadly. There are others, but we were definitely ahead of the wave. Yeah, no question. Which is why it was so hard and why we
you've done well.
Struggled in the early days. Well, we're still here. Of course, we opened in 2007, just as the sort of the financial
Financial
crash. So the
devastation.
only way was really up.
Yeah.
So it was a slow climb. But yeah, we're still here, and we really are. Some of our hotel partners now. We got Nobu, Café Royal for many years, Mandarin Oriental, Bulgari.
Amazing.
Hotel, the Standard. We just started with them.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, we got fantastic customers now,
Amazing.
partners, because, they really are.
Yeah,
They understand what we do.
I'm excited. So what's next? Where's Canton going to go next? What's your plans?
All we want to do is just what we do, keep doing what we do well and do more of it. Just spread the word. Absolutely.
Feels like it should be a mission for the country, basically, isn't it? To change our, here we are. Yeah, like I said before, the irony of our reputation as the greatest tea drinkers on the planet.
Yeah, well,
and you're gonna rescue us from what we've been drinking for the last 100 years or so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your question, I think, was about, are there other people doing it?
Yeah.
Yes, there are, and that's great too. That's opening up doors, pushing boundaries, making people recognise that they can't just get away with. I hesitate to mention any names of the companies, but we all know who they are, the sort of very ordinary stuff that's still out there. You just can't sell that if you're any self-respecting business that's doing good coffee and good food.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
You really...
Are they noticing the shift and the change? And we've noticed it certainly with craft beers and with craft gins and all this kind of stuff, that the big producers have gone and looked and gone, oh my goodness, there's a resurgence here of the sort of the proper stuff.
Yes.
And they almost accuse them of jumping on the bandwagon.
Definitely.
Because nobody has kind of copyrighted the term boutique in hotels or craft in beer or in gin and stuff. Are they pretending now? Are they using some of the words or some of the imagery, and are they starting to notice a change?
Definitely they are, because there is a decline in conventional black traditional tea sales.
Right.
And those tea bags, that's going down. Younger people are not drinking that stuff anymore.
Okay.
And there is a massive surge in this better whole leaf speciality tea.
And are any of them actually changing and doing decent tea, or are they all just pretending?
No.
Really? Straight in.
Well, I mean, it's all about scale, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, you
absolutely.
can't go in, you can't expect to do thousands of tons of this kind of tea if you have to,
go up a ladder,
shovel it
in
out.
a mountain in northern
You can't
China.
be a big conglomerate and actually still get the same sort of level of quality. It's just not possible.
Sometimes a useful stepping stone, though. I'm sort of always anti the big brands. I think there's room for both, but I just get annoyed by their complete dominance of a sector. But it's been quite interesting chatting to Joel from Bad Hand Coffee or Rupert from Concord Gin, and actually saying, sometimes, and Barefaced Brewery were the same, that it can be a useful stepping stone. So some of the brewers I spoke to, actually, the first place they tried an interesting beer, ironically, was in Wetherspoons. And they happened to have some sort of slightly quirkier IPA, and it started them on a trajectory where they started to brew their own.
Right.
Some people might go to a Costa's or a Starbucks and have a coffee and then go, okay, well, I'm a level up from my little cup of instant in a polystyrene cup. Where do I go from here? So maybe if the big guys start alluding to decent tea a little bit more, it'll be a stepping stone into...
No, I'm shaking my head. I mean, it's certainly...
I was trying to give you the deluded optimist perspective.
No, it didn't come from that direction. I don't think it's going that direction. No. I think it's going to be us, smaller, fanatical guys who are going to sort of push the boundaries that way.
I hope so. So now, out of everything you do, and I'm sure it's very different from the early days when you're trying to work out, who am I going to buy from? Who's my client? Am I selling direct? Am I on a website? Which part of your job now, your day-to-day role, gives you the most kind of reward? Which bit's the most exciting?
Oh, I still think it's actually just tasting with people who really don't expect the amazing characteristics that are coming out from different teas, and they taste that and just go, wow, I had no idea there was so much to tea. I had no idea it could taste so different. I had no idea it could taste so good. I mean, that still is really fun. I mean, I do these rare and wild tea tastings still with some of our partners and their customers. And it's just really fun seeing the enthusiasm from people afterwards saying, that is astonishing. I had no idea. Yeah. And there's so many people out there who just have no idea what this tea world has to offer, what these incredible leaves can yield. And it's so much fun, you can really drink, you can find a tea to drink with anything you're eating, any time of day. And, if you fundamentally like the taste of tea, then you've just got the most exciting world of discovery ahead of you.
You're right. You epitomise the reason that I set up this podcast, which is the human beings behind, I say hospitality, and by that I mean hospitality in your own kitchen and lounge. It's just kind of open the drawers, break bread, drink tea, drink wine, and stuff like that. But we're so lucky to be in a sector which fundamentally, has these amazing human beings who go and obsess about a specific thing, and whether it be sea salt or whether it be chocolate or whether it be tea or whether it be coffee or craft beer, people dedicate their entire kind of existence and being to finding this amazing produce. And I feel so lucky to live on planet Earth where people have done that. And it's so easy now that you can just walk into a tea house in London and have something from the other side of the globe that you've gone and found. So it's an exciting industry, I think, to be involved in.
It is. It definitely is.
We're going through, and I'm almost at the end here, but we're going through this particularly turbulent time politically, I suppose. You mentioned even 2007 and financial Armageddon, and it feels like really we've been in a decade of turbulence. Now, obviously, we managed to do an hour without mentioning Brexit.
I know, I was going to say,
good,
really, what turbulence?
I know. But would you say, is there anything that the government could do to support, your sector that they should be doing better and helping with? Whether that's business in general or whether that's specifically around tea. Because in hospitality, things like VAT come up where the hotel industry has kind of looked at it. We've got online traveling agencies about, kind of telling porky pies with and taking over people's, we type in a particular hotel name and their name comes up. You've got the ability to kind of move stuff around the world and how easy it is. So there may be that there's nothing, but is there anything you've come across in your sector where you go, man, the government made that harder than it should be? By the look in your eyes, no.
Interesting. There's no VAT on tea.
Right.
And that's a sort of historic
Really? That's
thing.
interesting.
Yeah.
There is a point of retail to the consumer, but not at point of...
Right.
Presumably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
And certainly there are extremely stringent rules on MRLs, maximum residue levels, which is all about things. But you know what? That's fine.
That's a good thing.
That is a good thing.
Right.
And that's another thing about absolutely knowing where your stuff comes from, where your tea comes from, because the domestic market in China, if the tea is grown just for the domestic market, then the MRLs are much, much higher.
Right.
And for America, the maximum residue level. So that's all as we're talking about, the pesticides and the chemicals that they can apply to the leaf.
Wow.
And for America, they're much lower than allowed in China. But in Europe, if we're still in Europe, the levels are much lower and much more stringent. And so as we so we have to know that primarily the teas are grown in a way that is going to come under those MRLs.
Right.
And we don't just leave it to chance. Of course, we have it tested. We have it tested there. Okay. We have it batch tested, because if any of our teas go above that and are tested by the port authorities and found to be to fail the test, then that entire shipment is destroyed, and we not only have to pay for destruction and storage, which might be weeks before destruction, but also we lose our entire stock. So we have to be fanatically careful about where this comes from. So in terms of what government, I haven't really sort of, it's one thing I don't blame the government for.
Excellent. Yeah,
actually, at the moment.
It's good to know. Yeah, nice to know there's something left.
Ask me about anything else that they do now.
Yeah, and I suppose you're an example of, we become obsessed that, you'd think we only traded with Europe, but you trade on a global level, not expected to change. You're confident and optimistic, presumably, for the future of international trade and working with China as a partner.
With obviously with the, we buy in dollars and euros.
Right.
Some of our herbals in euros, but at the moment, for the pound in the bucket, then, you know, we're going to be the cheaper to buy from. And God knows what's going to happen. I mean, it's already had a fairly sort of hefty effect on our
ability to purchase, presumably.
On the cost of tea. I mean, it's significantly more, and it's impacted heavily on the business, as it has on every other business buying
absolutely
outside the UK. And we haven't passed that on to our customers yet. And we'll, you know, in a competitive market, you know, would struggle ever to sort of pass on the whole.
Are you bringing tea over constantly, or do you get a couple of deliveries a year? How regular is the supply chain?
It's better than it used to be, obviously, with greater volume. It's, you know, we have a sort of 6-month stock, and it comes over sort of fairly regularly, but ship it over.
Yeah. How long does it take?
Really? It can be anything from, you know, 4 to 6 to 8 weeks.
Right. Okay. Nice. Got to cope with those fluctuations in demand. But all businesses are challenging, I think, and all markets on a global level on planet Earth that we live in. But congratulations on what you've created. I think it's fascinating. I now feel so much better informed. My poor, long-suffering wife, when I rock up home tonight again and say, "Here's another thing that I've learned today, darling," and all the rubbish tea is going to be chucked out, and we'll only be drinking.
Well, you can compost it all, of course.
Of course we can.
Except for those paper tea bags which have plastic in.
They're the plastic ones. That's in the news today. You're right. I've got into composting, and with my organic box delivery, and now I've started growing my own food in the garden. It's a dangerous thing to go and learn too much about a subject, but this has been fascinating. So good luck. Where should people go if they want to find out more, and if they want to follow Canton Tea and see your continued adventures? Where's the best place to go?
Okay, well, I think obviously there are all the social media stuff, the usual things that my team very good at doing, not me. And our website, if you are interested in learning more, then you can go onto our website and contact us, and you can see most of what we do. You can't actually get into the guts of our range and our prices unless you get an account. An account is terribly easy. But if you want to actually learn more about tea as well, then I could not recommend the UK Tea Academy more, because it really is the most fantastic resource for just expanding that level of knowledge, and people are so enthusiastic about it. They come out of it buzzing. I mean, literally, there is obviously a lot of caffeine, but they are just so enthralled by what they have learned and fascinated. Mostly what we hear is, I never knew how much I didn't know about tea. You know, that's what they say all the time.
I'm sure. I was the same, just doing the research last night and reading it. What's your website address? Do you know? CantonTea.com. Nice, easy one. Perfect.
And UKTeaacademy.com.
Perfect. I will put some links through to those as well on the website. So humansofhospitality.co.uk. Go there, type tea into the little search engine at any point, and it will bring up your episode, and we'll put some links in there. But thank you again for sparing the time, and even more for sparing so many cups of tea. Appreciate it.
Great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast, and remember that on the website humansofhospitality.co.uk every week we put on some show notes and some links through to the various websites or social media that are mentioned, and we also do a nice little breakdown of that week's conversations into specific topics, so you can jump through the podcast and just listen to some of the highlights if you wish. If you've not done so already, if you could leave us a review on iTunes or one of the other podcast players of your choice, that would be hugely appreciated. Thank you so much, and we'll be out with another episode next Monday.